If you see this, run. And those oxygen masks, there's a terrifying truth flight attendants aren't allowed to tell you about them. From what would really happen if someone opened the plane door at 30,000 feet, to why you should never sit beneath an overhead locker without handles. Buckle up, because we're about to nosedive into secrets airlines don't want you to know. If you've flown even just a few times, you'll know the routine safety demo by heart. What you don't know is that hidden behind the smiles and seatbelt signs are life-saving secrets airlines don't share. And not knowing them could cost you everything. You'll hear that in an emergency, oxygen masks will drop down. These lovely yellow masks will help you breathe normally at high altitude until cabin pressure is restored. What the airlines don't tell you is that there is only 15 minutes worth of oxygen in those masks. But that's not the worst part. You need to act fast. If the cabin loses pressure at high altitude, you've got about 10 to 15 seconds before your brain starts shutting down from lack of oxygen. You won't feel it coming, you'll just black out. That is why when they tell you to put your own mask on first before helping anyone else, it could be the difference between life and death. And don't worry too much though. If you can get your mask on in time, 15 minutes should be more than enough for the pilot to get the plane to a lower altitude, where the air is breathable. One more thing, did you know that the oxygen masks for the cabin crew are not the same as the ones passengers get? Crew masks are actually equipped with tiny built-in microphones, so they can still communicate with each other during high-altitude emergencies. Here's another crucial mistake nearly all passengers make that you can't afford to not know about. If you do one thing the next time you fly, do at least listen to the cabin crew when they tell you where your life jacket will be and check that it's actually there. Apparently, there's a real problem with people stealing life jackets to keep as a souvenir. So you're going to want to check the person who sat in your seat before you wasn't that type of person. I know the souvenirs in the airport can be expensive, but a life jacket? Seriously? In the unlikely event of a plane crash, you might think chances of survival are 0 to none. But did you know that the seat you're in can make a difference as to whether you're likely to survive or not? Tests show that passengers right at the front of the plane, i.e. those in first class, are most likely to suffer if there were an emergency. This is because the front of the plane often takes the full force of impact in a crash. Passengers seated toward the back are more likely to survive, protected by distance from the initial impact and with better access to intact exit routes. So maybe it's not worth paying all that money for some extra legroom and a cotton napkin. But before you folks who usually fly economy get too cocky, you're not the safest ones on the plane either. Have you ever noticed that the attendant seats are often facing backwards? Well, that's because it's significantly safer. In a crash or hard landing, front-facing seats are forced forwards. But those in rear-facing seats, they absorb and spread the impact through their backs, which seriously cuts down the risk of head, neck, and spinal injuries. Not only that, but their seats have better, more heavy-duty seat belts. Yes, that also makes them safer than you. And why the difference? Well, airlines actually have more reason to keep flight attendants alive over passengers. They're the ones trained to handle an emergency, and if they survive, the chances of everyone else making it out go way up. The seatbelts? Well, here's the thing. If airlines gave every passenger those heavier seatbelts, it would actually have a major impact on the plane's total weight. And when you're 35,000 feet in the air, every extra pound matters. Too much weight can mess with fuel efficiency, performance, even safety. But that's not the only reason. Turns out, most passengers actually prefer front-facing seats. Why? Well, because psychologically, our brains feel safer facing the direction we're moving, especially in a situation as anxiety-inducing as air travel. Makes sense. On the subject of seats, get this. For decades, airplane seats have been gradually getting smaller and smaller. In the 1970s, the average legroom on an aircraft was 35 inches. Today, it's just 31. And the width of the average seat has decreased from 18 inches to about 16.5 over the same time period. That means more seats on the plane and more dollar for the airline company. Hey, it's sad, but at least you'll feel a bit more reassured that it's not just you getting fatter. Given all that clever and logical technology used on a plane, you wouldn't expect the brain box scientists behind aircraft design to be superstitious, would you? Well, it turns out they do have one big superstition. Many planes don't have a row 13. These include planes of Air France, Iberia, Lufthansa, and Ryanair. Most airlines say it's not because they are being superstitious themselves, but because they are aware some passengers find the idea of sitting on row 13 unlucky. So they've left it out for customer service reasons. And some airlines also don't have an aisle 17, because 17 is considered unlucky in many countries, like Italy. When written as the Roman numeral XVII, its anagram is VIXI, which roughly translates to I have lived in Latin, aka my life is over. Yikes. It's every traveler's worst nightmare. Your bag goes missing, or even worse, stolen. Airports are a hotbed for thieves. Packed with exhausted, distracted people, thieves thrive here. But the real danger zone? Security. Think about it. Shoes off, laptop out, liquids here, jacket there. It's the perfect storm for thieves who strike while passengers are separated from view of their belongings. But it gets worse because sometimes the thieves are the very people meant to protect you. In 2023, 2 TSA agents at Miami International were literally caught on camera using sleight of hand to steal from passengers while they were going through security. But wait, it gets weirder. Also in 2023, over in the Philippines, a security officer at Manila's airport was caught on camera stuffing $300 worth of stolen bills straight into her mouth. Yep, she actually ate the evidence. When questioned, she said she was just eating some chocolate. Man, I've never seen those kinds of chocolate coins before. So if you've made it through the airport, surely you're safe on the plane, right? Wrong. Thieves can still strike there, too. In 2024, 3 Chinese nationals were arrested for stealing a handbag mid-flight on Philippine Airlines. But this isn't a one-off. According to pilots, this kind of in-flight theft happens more than you'd think, especially on routes to China, Vietnam, and Bangkok. Here's how it works. The thieves travel separately to avoid suspicion and start scoping out potential victims at the gate. Then, once the plane hits cruising altitude and the cabin lights go down for the night flights, it's crime time. One thief pretends to grab their own bag from the overhead bin, but secretly rummages through someone else's. Then they snag cash, jewelry, or credit cards, whatever they can get their hands on. Finally, they pass it off to an accomplice in a sneaky spot like the bathroom. Thankfully, airlines are catching on. Security teams now flag suspicious passengers, assign them window seats to limit their movements, and alert the cabin crew. But there are ways to protect yourself too. Keep your valuables in your under-seat bag. And if you must use the overhead bin, face your zipper toward the back of the locker. That way, anyone trying to get in has to pull the whole bag out, and you'll spot them fast. Okay, sorry guys, but this one is not gonna make you feel any better about flying. Have you ever wondered how a plane can go missing? So many missing plane situations over the last few years remain complete and utter mysteries. How is it even possible? Well, buckle up, because until shockingly recently, planes were not tracked all the time. And if you're thinking, wait, what? That can't be right. Oh, it's very right. Let's go back to 2014. Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur and never arrived in Beijing. And to this day, we still don't know exactly what happened. Why? Because once a plane flies out over the ocean, it leaves behind traditional radar coverage. That's right, radar only works within a few hundred miles of land. After that, planes relying on radar have to perform manual check-ins over long-range radio or send time position updates every 10 to 15 minutes. If something goes wrong in between, well, good luck figuring out where to even start looking. The global panic caused by MH370's disappearance was a massive wake-up call. So, aviation authorities stepped up, big time. Now, most commercial planes use a system called Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast, or ADS-B out. It's a GPS-based system that broadcasts a plane's location, altitude, and speed every half second. And thanks to space-based satellites, we can now pick up that signal anywhere on Earth, even over the most remote oceans. Today, it's estimated that more than 75% of passenger planes worldwide are equipped with ADS-B. So, if a plane disappeared today, chances are we'd know exactly where it went. And then again, there's still a tiny chance of failure if a plane loses power or the system malfunctions. Nothing is 100% foolproof. Okay, now on to some very unsavory business. Next time that friendly air hostess offers you a cup of water, tea, or coffee, just say no. You could end up very sick. On planes, the water is filthy. Airlines are meant to regularly clean the water tank with sanitizing products, but it really depends on how diligent the crew are. Legally, airlines are only required to fully flush and clean their onboard water tanks 4 times a year. In between that time, the tanks are not emptied, but simply topped off when needed, leaving the nasties lurking at the bottom. Shockingly, 1 in 10 aircraft test positive for coliform, a sign of dangerous bacteria, viruses, and multicellular parasites. Unfortunately, the parasites that call this tank home build up a resistance to the chemicals, so they just stay there. In fact, some studies have suggested that even washing your hands in a plain bathroom water is a risk. Instead, it might be a wiser move to opt for hand sanitizer or wipes just for the plane. I mean, who wants to run the risk of ruining their vacation with a bout of E. coli? Not me. And while we're on the subject of plane bathrooms, bear in mind that they can unlock from the outside. There's usually a catch under the no smoking sign that can open the door in an emergency. Finally, you may wonder why, years after they banned smoking on planes, there's always an ashtray in the bathroom. Well, this is because there are always some naughty passengers who will sneak into the bathrooms for a smoke. Airlines prefer that if they must do it, they snub their cigarette out in the ashtray rather than put the butt in the trash bin, causing a risk of fire. This next one might make you feel safer on a plane, or it might make you feel worse. Staff on board have a whole range of dangerous equipment available to them, hidden out of sight. Most planes are equipped with, get ready, handcuffs in case of unruly passengers, defibrillators in case of cardiac arrest, cabin and cockpit surveillance cameras in case of hijack, fire extinguishers in case of fire, obviously, and axes to rip through panels and sidewalls in case of an electrical fire. Wow. Every piece of that hidden equipment is built to save your life, but the fact that it even exists means there are emergencies the airlines expect and hope you never find out about. But the most lethal weapon on a plane? The cabin crew themselves. While smartly dressed attendants may look ladylike and demure while serving drinks and snacks at 30,000 feet, some are specially trained to take you out, if they have to. Many airports run specialized training programs where flight attendants can learn aggressive self-defense techniques designed for tight, close-quarters combat. We're talking about double ear slaps, eye pokes, groin kicks, all made for maximum impact in minimum space. But it gets even more intense aboard Chengdu East Star Airlines in China, whose flight attendants undergo military-grade combat training, complete with full-on wrestling classes. So yeah, don't mess. Speaking of the crew, have you ever looked up mid-flight to find your flight attendant mysteriously missing? Maybe you assumed they were hiding from you, especially if you're on your 11th free bag of pretzels. But in reality, they might have gone to sleep. On long-haul flights, airlines employ extra crews so others can rest. And no, they're not curling up across empty rows in the back of economy. They disappear into hidden compartments built right above the passengers' heads. These sleeping quarters are usually accessed by secret staircases at the front or back of the plane, often behind what looks like just another storage cabinet. Inside, you'll find a tiny hallway of bunks, stacked like capsules, sometimes with a curtain, a reading light, and not much else. But they're not exactly luxurious, with some crew describing a nap there feeling like sleeping in a flying coffin. And here's something most people have no idea about. Next time you're flying, look up, because you might be sitting right below one of the best-kept crew secrets on the entire plane. At first glance, it looks like just an overhead locker with no handle. Nothing to see, right? Wrong. That's actually a secret door. It leads from a hidden crew sleeping area directly down into the main cabin, meaning yes, crew could technically drop right down on your head. But don't worry, they probably won't. That hatch is actually an emergency escape route, designed for crew to use if they need to evacuate fast. Now, we've all winced at a hard landing, maybe even cursed the pilot under our breath. But before you call it sloppy flying, know this: that jolt might just be what kept you safe. When runways are wet or slick, pilots often land firmly on purpose. That's to reduce the risk of hydroplaning, where a thin layer of water prevents the tires from gripping the runway. No grip means no brakes, and that's a problem. Pilots are trained to plant the plane quickly and firmly so they can bring it to a stop well before the end of the tarmac. So next time you feel a bit of a bump, take it as a good sign. You didn't just survive a rough landing, you experienced an expertly executed one. On the subject of landings, ever notice how cabin lights dim when you're landing at night? It's not just to help you get some shut-eye, it's in case the landing goes south and you need to evacuate. With the lights dimmed, your eyes adjust to the darkness, so you'll be able to actually see where you're going instead of stumbling off the plane. And one more crazy thing about landings: did you know that at high-tech airports like London Heathrow, some planes can literally land themselves? It's an autopilot-type system called Autoland, and it's used when things get dicey, like in heavy fog. The plane's autopilot links up with the airport systems to touch down automatically. No, but don't worry, pilots still do most of the landings by hand. Robots aren't fully in charge. Yet. Speaking of autopilot, pilots' working rules state they can only be on duty for anything up to 16 hours at a time. And that's a long time. As a result, it's not uncommon for a pilot to have a quick nap while flying the plane. Yeah, really. A 2013 study showed that over half of pilots had fallen asleep at the controls. On longer flights, pilots are actually required to have a sleep under most airline policies. There will be a relief crew on board, and they'll operate the flight while the original crew rests in those special bunk areas we talked about earlier. On most long-haul aircraft, pilots have access to separate sleeping quarters from the cabin crew. They typically include 1 or 2 bunk beds, a reclining seat, personal lighting, ventilation controls, and sometimes even an entertainment screen. But being a pilot isn't all perks. They're subject to tight rules, even during meal breaks. In the classic comedy film Airplane, when everyone, pilots included, who ate the fish get sick from food poisoning, chaos and hilarity ensue. But, surprisingly, airlines have measures in place to avoid this happening in real life. The pilot and co-pilot have to eat different meals, and they're not allowed to share. If one pilot's meal makes them sick, the other can take over. And this isn't just paranoia, it's for real. In 1982, a pilot, along with 7 other crew members, ate a contaminated dessert mid-flight and got violently ill. Luckily, the co-pilot hadn't eaten the same dish and landed the plane safely. Some airlines like Virgin Atlantic and Air Canada offer special crew-only menus, while other airlines allow the pilot and co-pilot to choose different dishes from various class cabin menus. So, real talk. We all know planes are filled with secret features, but this next one is hiding in plain sight on every commercial plane. And once you know what it's for, you'll never be able to forget it. It's this random-looking handle next to the aircraft doors. Just another door handle, right? Nope. The reason it's there is actually kind of dark. It's actually a large, sturdy grab handle, which is there for cabin crew to hold on to while they're manning the doors and helping passengers out of the plane in an emergency. Now, why would you need that? Well, it's in case of panic. In an emergency, passengers are more likely to push and rush to get to the door and out of it. And in the crush, there's a real concern that a flight attendant could be pushed out of the plane. So, this handle is there to help attendants stay where they're meant to be. Obviously, airlines are keen to avoid any kind of chaos. But what you might not know is that you, a passenger, will be the absolute last to know if anything's going wrong. You might have even been in an emergency situation and didn't even know it. See, flight attendants have secret codes used to talk about all the wild stuff going on board without letting passengers in on it. Let's start with one of the most terrifying. If you ever hear a crew member mention a Code 300 or Code Angel, it's not as peaceful as it sounds. That's their quiet way of saying there's been a death on board. If someone dies mid-flight, the crew's supposed to quietly move the body to an empty row. But that doesn't always happen. On one 15-hour flight from Australia to Qatar, a couple were forced to sit right next to a dead body after a fellow passenger passed away in the aisle seat next to them. The crew tried to move her to business class, but because she was on the larger side, they couldn't get her through. So instead, they laid her across two empty seats right next to the couple who had to sit beside her body for the rest of the flight. Now let that sink in. There are codes for medical issues too. A code yellow means someone's feeling faint or queasy. Then there's PAN, a code that means we've got a serious problem but we're not crashing yet. Short for possible assistance needed. It could be a mechanical fault or a sudden medical emergency that might mean the plane has to reroute to a nearby airport. This one's dark. If you've ever heard the crew talking about a hotel, it's not about checking into the Four Seasons. It means one thing: panic. This signals that there's a potential security threat on board the flight. Sometimes the code is referred to as Squawking 7500. The number sequence a pilot will use to communicate with cabin or ground crew that something is seriously wrong. Now we're talking hijackings, bomb threats, real deal nightmare fuel. When this happens, the aircraft's transponder will send a signal with this code to alert authorities that the plane has officially entered emergency mode. But of course, it wouldn't be airline code talk without some passive-aggressive gems. Ever taken the chance to sprawl out across some empty seats? Hey, congrats! You might have been called a mermaid by the crew. That's flight crew code for passengers who spread out their limbs and luggage like they own the place, and they often come as a pair. And here's a fun one. If you thought VIP meant very important person, think again. On board an aircraft, it can also mean very irritating passenger. Yep, there's a whole code for dealing with the Karens of the sky. So next time you overhear a strange word at an airport or on an airplane, just know something might be going down, and you're not supposed to know about it. So, you've checked in your bags, grabbed your overpriced airport latte, and strolled to your gate. But behind the scenes, it's a whole operation. Welcome to the underground world of baggage handlers. 14-hour shifts, 2 a.m. start times, and 16,000 steps a day, all while being blasted with freezing air and dodging 200-pound duffel bags flying around conveyor belts. Being a baggage handler is no picnic. First stop, the bag room. Luggage pours in on a conveyor belt. Handlers load it onto carts, and guess what? They have no idea how many bags are coming until they check the passenger count and just wing it. And then comes the luggage snake for loading bags into the hold. Each full load takes about 20 to 30 minutes to stack in a space that's so tight. Claustrophobes look away. But that isn't the scariest thing baggage handlers have to face. Domestic flights are often used to transport human organs bound for transplant operations in hospitals. And yes, coffins too. It's called human remains cargo, and it's more common than you'd think. Just another reason cargo hold is way more intense than it looks. Just ask the animals down there. Airlines do their best to take care of pets, but unfortunately for the poor animals, it's not much fun down there. Airports are extremely loud places. And while they're being loaded onto the plane, your furry friend is subject to very loud noise. Airport staff have to wear ear protection when they're working on runways. Pets don't get that chance. Try to picture it. You're locked in a crate, engines screaming around you, weird smells everywhere, bright lights. It's like a sensory nightmare, and that's before takeoff. In the air, pets are kept in a pressurized, heated compartment in the plane, usually known as Hold 5, that's separate to the belly from where the luggage is kept. But let's not sugarcoat it. They're alone, confused, and in complete darkness for the entire flight, probably wondering where their owner's gone. Some airlines do go the extra mile with special animal handlers and even pet lounges, but that's the exception. And here's the part nobody talks about. Some breeds, especially snub-nosed dogs like pugs and bulldogs, are banned from flying altogether on major airlines, including American Airlines and Delta. Why? Well, because they're prone to breathing problems, and the cargo hold can be too risky. Tragically, there have been instances where pets don't survive their journey. My advice is, don't take pets on a plane unless you really, really have to. When you stop to think about it, traveling on an airplane is surreal and terrifying. You're thousands of feet in the air, inside a giant metal tube, and your life is basically in the hands of physics and some very, very important bolts. But here's the real intrusive thought. What if someone opens a door mid-flight? Like Final Destination style, we get sucked out into the sky? Now, believe it or not, people have actually tried this. Unruly passengers, mid-air meltdowns, straight-up chaos in the cabin. But can it actually happen? Most modern airplanes use something called plug doors. Now think of it like a bathtub stopper, except the bathtub is your plane and the stopper is holding back the literal atmosphere. These doors are pressed into place by the insane difference between the cabin pressure and outside air. The pressure inside the plane is so much higher than the outside, it's like the door is welded shut by the air itself. You need superhuman strength to even budge it. Even at lower altitudes where the difference in pressure is less extreme, it's still way too much for a person to overcome. But there's one more twist in the tale, and it involves a dude named D.B. Cooper. If you haven't heard of him, in the 70s, he hijacked a plane, got the pilot to depressurize the cabin, then opened the door and parachuted out the back with a suitcase full of cash. After that stunt, planes were fitted with something called Cooper vanes, which are little mechanical devices that help physically prevent doors from opening mid-air. So yeah, if you've ever stared at that exit door and wondered, could someone open that right now? The answer is generally no, not without rewriting the laws of physics. And now, one of the most controversial questions in the history of air travel. What's the deal with airplane mode? Some passengers think it's one of the biggest cons in aviation, just a way to make you watch the safety demo or avoid the chaos of 100 phone calls at 30,000 feet. But according to pilots, it's not that simple. At 30,000 feet, the phone isn't going to make the plane fall out of the sky. But when you dip below 10,000 feet for landing, that's when things get a little, touchy. That phase is one of the most critical parts of a flight, and pilots are juggling a lot. Navigating tight airspace, adjusting speed, managing flaps, monitoring weather, tracking other aircraft, and most importantly, communicating with aircraft control. Meanwhile, your phone, if left on without airplane mode, is a clingy little thing. It'll keep sending out radio waves, trying to ping nearby cell towers, desperately searching for a connection. Those pings can interfere with cockpit headsets, creating an irritating buzzing noise like a mosquito in pilots' ears. Just a minor inconvenience, not a big deal, right? Well, sure, that's unless you're the person who is, trying to fly the plane. And that's why the FAA requires pilots to avoid all non-essential distractions during landing. Because when you're guiding a metal tube full of people back to Earth at 180 miles per hour, even a little interference can turn into a very big deal. You might remember when it used to be the law to turn your phone off completely during flights. On most airlines these days, you can keep it on as long as airplane mode is activated. There's only one rare case when a flight attendant might still ask you to fully power down, if the weather is bad and visibility is low. In those cases, the pilot might opt for the auto-land system we talked about earlier, and they'll only take over if something goes wrong, meaning no interference is key. So yeah, not switching to airplane mode is not going to crash the plane, but you might seriously annoy the pilot during the most critical part of the flight. Capiche? Okay, picture this. You're there in your seat, eyeing the snack cart and debating between pretzels and cookies. But up front in the cockpit, your pilot's doing mental math, trying to figure out if there's enough fuel to land the plane. Yeah, that's a real thing. See, not many passengers know it, but one of the biggest things weighing an airplane down is fuel. And more fuel can actually make the plane burn through it faster. It's a vicious circle. The more fuel a plane carries, the heavier it gets, and the heavier it gets, the more fuel it burns. That means the more money down the drain for airlines. To combat this, some airlines often put pressure on the pilots to carry only the minimal amount of fuel required for the journey, and not a drop more. But here's where it gets dicey. This underfueling sometimes leads to trouble if the pilot burns fuel trying to avoid thunderstorms or is delayed by air traffic control. They might even have to land at an alternative airport so they don't totally run out. So next time you hear the captain announce a mid-flight delay or reroute, just know it might be squeaky bum time up in the cockpit. On the note of fuel, did you ever know that there are different types of fuel aircraft use? And using the wrong one, like this man here, can be deadly? It all comes down to these numbers you may have seen at the gas station's fuel pump. Those numbers relate to the minimum octane rating of the fuel. Octane is a chemical compound found in gasoline that is relatively stable, meaning it makes fuels less likely to ignite prematurely. A higher octane number indicates a fuel with more octane, which means the fuel is more resistant to pre-detonation. That's why it's commonly used in engines that need more power, like sports cars and aircraft engines. While it's common for gas in your car to be around 90, aviation gas, known as avgas, is around 100, and has a specific formulation for high-compression aircraft. Still, avgas is only used for piston-engine aircraft and not commercial airliners. Commercial airliners with turbine engines use a fuel called jet fuel, like Jet A or Jet A1. This is a kerosene-based fuel with a totally different composition and higher energy density that works at high altitudes and stress. All you need to know is that refueling a plane with the wrong fuel is extremely dangerous. For example, if avgas is put into a commercial airliner, the engines could explode and set the aircraft alight. In 2014, for example, an air ambulance was refueled incorrectly and burst into flames shortly after takeoff, eliminating all 4 people on board. So, how do you know if an aircraft has been fueled correctly? Well, the truth is, you won't be able to tell unless you see a fuel technician refilling the plane like this. You see, they color-code the nozzle and fuel caps on planes to make sure they are refueled correctly. Jet fuel typically has a green or black nozzle or fuel cap, whereas avgas, typically used on smaller aircraft, has a red nozzle and fuel cap. Therefore, if you're on a typical commercial aircraft with a turbine engine and see a fueling operator like the one here attaching a red nozzle to the wing, run. That's the wrong fuel. However, no need to get anxious next time you're on a flight. Remember that story from 2014 earlier? The pilot mistakenly replaced both fuel caps, which is highly out of the ordinary. Plus, most large airports don't even have avgas. Avgas is typically only used at smaller airports that serve smaller piston engine aircraft. That's the only reason the accident in 2014 could happen, since that airport served both fuel types, but this is very rare. The reassuring thing is that most ground crew are incredibly well trained and follow strict training and refueling procedures. After each refueling, ground crews generate a fuel ticket using the fuel ticket management system, which registers the refueling information, like the fuel type. Ground crews are hyper-aware of their use in potential investigations, meaning mistakes are rare. Plus, most modern fuel management systems have built-in checks and systems to prevent misfueling to cross-check the aircraft details against the fuel used. The nozzles are also designed to be incompatible, as you can see the different types here, making it impossible to connect the wrong hose. Fuel types aren't the only important thing ground crews must check. Before inserting the fuel nozzle, they must make sure to bond the refueling vehicle or a grounding rod to the aircraft. This is done by connecting a bonding cable to a specific section of the aircraft's metal structure. This prevents the buildup of static electricity that could potentially ignite fuel vapors, leading to a fire or explosion. These cables help create a safe path for static discharge between the aircraft and the ground, ensuring the aircraft is properly grounded. If you don't see the bonding line connected as the nozzle is about to get inserted, then you should be worried. Though newer aircraft models like the Airbus A350 and A320 are now designed with advanced technologies to reduce or eliminate the need for traditional grounding cables, so it's not always a mistake. Usually, these higher-tech planes are made of composite materials like carbon fiber, which naturally dissipate static charges better. And on the note of static electricity, the thought of a plane getting hit by lightning is pretty scary, right? Well, I hate to be the one to break this to you, but it happens all the time. It's estimated that in the USA, each plane will be struck by lightning once a year on average. Yikes. Luckily, though, planes are built with this in mind. Most commercial aircraft, like the Boeing 737 or Airbus A320, are covered with an aluminum outer layer. In physics, aluminum is a great conductor for electricity produced in a lightning strike and allows the electrical charge to flow harmlessly along the surface and exit the plane, usually through the tail or wingtips. You might see a flash or hear a bang, but that's just your nerves taking a hit. The plane itself will be fine. Or what about this? Ever been unlucky enough to be on a plane that's hit some pretty wild turbulence? You might be familiar with the heart-stopping moment the wings start wobbling like they're made of spaghetti. Well, surprisingly, they're actually meant to look like this. Modern aircraft wings are designed with flexibility in mind, and they're way stronger than they look. These days, airplanes' wings are made with a mixture of aluminum alloys and carbon fiber composites, both materials known for their light weight, good corrosion resistance, strength, and flexibility. Aircraft engineers stress test plane wings, with planes like the Boeing 787's wings flexing up to 25 feet before they finally broke. Engineers calculate the maximum stress wings will face in the flight and then build them to withstand 50% more than that limit. So, unless you're flying into a Category 5 hurricane with a rhino on each wing, you should be just fine. Here's something else you've probably never really thought about. You know those little pull-down tables on planes where you rest your hands, snacks, and drinks, or maybe even your face for a mid-flight nap? Yeah, they're disgusting. Like, worse than the toilet disgusting, literally. Studies have shown that tray tables and seatback pockets on board airplanes can harbor more bacteria than the actual airplane bathrooms. 8 times as much, in fact. On short-haul flights, the turnaround time between landing and taking off again can be as little as 30 minutes, and on budget airlines, the cabin crew is often the only cleaning crew, meaning those grimy little tables probably weren't wiped down after the last guy used them, or the guy before that, or before that, and it gets worse. There are confirmed stories of passengers changing baby diapers right on the tray tables.
This needs to stop now.
And stuffing the evidence into the rear seat pockets. So yeah, maybe think twice before setting down your sandwich or reaching for the safety card in the in-flight magazines. Long-haul flights might get a deeper clean since there's a bit more time on the ground, but still, it's hit or miss. That's why frequent flyers swear by one thing: bring your own antibacterial wipes. You're welcome. We all know that finding the best flight deal can be more exhausting than the longest flight, but listen up, because I'm about to let you in on some secret hacks that feel borderline illegal but totally aren't. First off, if you want the cheapest flights, do not just book whenever. Experts say the sweet spot is between 2 to 3 months before for domestic flights and over 90 days before if you're going international. That's when prices are lowest, but here's the real kicker. Tuesdays are your golden ticket. Apparently, most airlines drop new fares on Monday nights, and by Tuesday afternoon, other airlines are competing to offer a better price. Boom. And an extra tip, buy early in the morning. Fewer people are searching, which means less price jacking from those sneaky algorithms. But watch out, because there's one sneaky trick airlines use: dynamic pricing. As tickets sell and departures near, prices rise unpredictably, so finding the perfect time to book might be a tricky task. But knowing the game, that's your edge. Even the location of the seat you book can make a huge difference. Many frequent flyers say that sitting in the back of the plane might actually get you better service. Why? Well, flight attendants can hand out extras without everyone watching. Up front, everything has to look fair, but on the back row, attendants might be more likely to slip you some extra perks if you ask for them. Free snacks, drinks, personal care items, you got it. And if you're flying with a buddy, here's a cheeky trick that almost guarantees scoring a spot next to an empty seat. Book the aisle and window in a 3-seat row, leaving the middle up for grabs. The theory is that most people avoid middle seats like the plague, so they'll likely choose a different row. Worst case, someone takes the middle, and you politely ask to swap, giving them a sweet upgrade to the aisle or window seat, while you and your friend get to sit together. Win-win. Got any airline secrets I missed? Drop them in the comments, I'd love to hear them. And before you go, check out another wild video of unbelievable moments caught on planes. Thanks for watching.